So I'd like to begin this evening by wishing all of you a warm tashdele. Good evening. It's good to see all of you. And
大家，
go ahead.
大家，祝大家吉祥如意然后大家晚上好。
So we will begin as usual with the Vajradhara lineage prayer. And before we begin, usually when Trungpa Rinpoche taught the Vajradhara lineage prayer, but when we had teachings, when we recited this, Rinpoche would often say a few words about the Vajradhara lineage prayer. I'll say just a little bit now. Maybe we'll speak about it more on later sessions. But this is a prayer that gives the main meditation instructions of the Karma Kagyu lineage. It has very important instructions. It has great blessings.
嗯，首先呢，我们将从念诵像通常一样，从念诵金刚总持七请文开始。通常呢，以前这个创古仁波切在我们念诵七请文之前呢，总是会说几句的。那么我呢，这次也打算讲几句。就是这个祈祷文呢，是我们这个噶玛噶举传承的一个祈请文。
So, the author of this prayer is a master named Pengar Champo Sampo. Pengar Champo Sampo. And he was a student of the sixth Karmapa and the teacher of the seventh Karmapa. He's included in the list of the main lineage figures of our Karma Kagyu lineage. So these teachings give us all of the instructions we need to practice the entire path of meditation. So as we recite them, please recite them with great faith and devotion.
嗯，这个祈请文的作者呢是三婆，嗯，
Then go to
汤博，
Champo Sampo.
sorry Anyway，刚才康布说了这个作者的名字，然后他是下次我要记住，不好意思，他是第六世噶玛巴的学生，也是第七世噶玛巴的老师。他在我们这个噶玛噶举传承中呢，是一个很重要的人物那么这个祈请文呢，它基本上给了我们所有的关于这个噶玛噶举这个修行的这个所有的这个指示，口诀诀窍。
So we will now recite the prayer. I'll say more about the prayer on in future classes, but maybe a little bit each time, and then we'll get a little bit each time we go through the prayer. So next we'll recite the prayers.
那么接下来我们就开始念诵这个祈请文接下来的每节课呢，我们都会讲一点关于这个祈请文的这个一些事情。
Okay. 오로제 찬제 델로나로당 말바밀라 죄제 감보바 뒤숨세자 근젠 갈마바 제시천재주발드나 지다차송바른 로바소 sablamchajachelanganyt Nyamedrogen dabo kajula solvadeb so kajulama namjupadeno nam darjunjilum Shenlogon jigambar sombashin senor guna cha 바당 찐디르 다즈 베곰 제나 예굴셴바메 발진지로 무구공지고르손바신 맹아들고 윤두소와대배곰 체나 주민모고 제왈진지로 잉내공지무 실손바신 간설도뱅오보소마대 마주대갈로베곰제나 곰자로단랄왈진지로 남동오저굴손바신 지하마인 칠량차르왈라 망가로발잘 회검제나 고르데엘메도발진지로 개와군도양다라마당 달매체지발랄롱죄징 사달람지윤대랍조는 돌지장기공방유르도조 돌지장기공방유르도조 산제주단속이 조남라 자주바르도다니 겹숨지다기 진속이백 수남기로라 펜질 산제루발쇼 자자와란 샤바탄 제수이랑 구징소와이가와 중세 다기지사바 담제다기 찬주지릉오 사지부주주징메도람 리랄링신이대념바데 상계싱도미대 불와이 로그남다싱라 제발쇼 심제남기 삼바당 로이체라지다와 제중투몽태바이 제기콜로콜도소. In the Dharma Expanse Palace of Akanishta, the essence of all Buddhas of the three times who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Please bless me and all beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. Now please think to yourselves that we must bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings throughout space, to the state of completely perfect enlightenment. And in order to do this, we must listen to and contemplate the Dharma. So think to yourself that we are taking these teachings this evening for that purpose and listen with this motivation of bodhicitta. The Dharma that we are listening to is the way of the Bodhisattva. And of the 10 chapters of the way of the Bodhisattva, we are speaking about the first chapter, the chapter on the benefits of bodhicitta. Susan, please unmute.
我们现在听闻这节课呢，佛法我们要带着这样的发心，就是呢，我们要将所有的这个乳母的有情众生，一起证得这个佛果位。我们带着这样的发心来进行闻思修的修行。那么我们这一次呢，讲课一共，我们现在的这个修行呢，这个听闻佛法的。就是这个入菩萨行论一共有10品，现在我们在讲这个第1品。
So within the first chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva, we have we began with the introductory 3 verses, and then we spoke about the precious human life, and then the various benefits of bodhicitta in general. Then we got to this section discussing the difference between aspirational bodhicitta, engaged bodhicitta, and finally we have then we get to the passage on the specific benefits of aspirational bodhicitta and the engaged bodhicitta. So we've spoken about the benefits of aspirational bodhicitta, and today we've come to the point where we will speak about the benefits of engaged bodhicitta.
这个第1品呢，我们一共就是开始讲了，进行了这个3个句子的这个简单介绍，然后接下来呢，我们就讲了这个人生难得，然后我们要讲了这个菩提心，功德利益。接下来呢，我们就开始讲了这个愿菩提心和行菩提心的定义、意义以及不同。上一节课呢，我们具体的讲了这个愿菩提心的这个功德利益。这节课呢，我们要开始讲行菩提心的种种功德利益。
But before we speak about that, there are a few good questions that came in over the group chat. I'm delighted to know that you're all discussing and coming up with good questions. So the first question is from the English discussion group, and the group and the discussion and the question reads, "What is a higher rebirth? Is it to be reborn in the heavens, the God realms, or in a precious human birth?" As the text clearly states that a precious human birth is most difficult to get. However, in the story of Maitra's daughter, he is rewarded birth in the heavens for the limited virtuous thought. If daughter had a much greater or unlimited virtuous thought, would he have been born in a precious human birth?
我们在讲课之前呢，先就这个在群组里边，在WhatsApp 群组里边的这个问题先进行一下讲解。第一个问题呢是来自英语小组的一个问题，它这个问题是这样的：什么是更高的这个投生？是投生到天界，还是获得宝贵的人身？这个经文中呢，明确的指出这个宝贵的人身是难得的。但是呢，在梅扎之女的这个故事中呢，梅扎之女因为她有限的善念呢，她获得了这个天界的投生。那么如果她有更大或无限的善念，她会投生为珍贵的人身吗？
So here, first of all, in verse 4, where it says I've gained what is most difficult to get, the precious, the leisures and resources that benefit beings. The most difficult to hear is intended primarily as emphasis, saying it's really difficult to get it. Generally, when we talk about virtuous, defiled virtuous deeds, so the regular virtuous things that ordinary beings do, the greater the virtuous deed, the higher in the God realms you're going to be reborn. So for regular virtuous deeds, if you do something incredibly virtuous without any particular aspiration attached to it, then the highest birth would be in like one of the six realms of the desire God realm or so forth, where this is considered a better rebirth worldly, because I mean, what worldly person wouldn't want to live in a God realm for millions of years where all of your needs are satisfied just by practically merely thinking about it, especially in the higher of the desire God realms?
这个我们现在讲呢，就是这个人生的难得哈。我们现在讲的这些善行呢，指的是有漏的善行。在这里边它不是无漏的善行。那么这些有漏的这个善行呢，也就是说我们人世间的这个这些一些善行的话呢，就是当然你的这个你的善行是越大的，那么或者你的善念是越大的，那么你就会在这个六道轮回中呢，你向上升的这个道呢就会更高。如果你的发心没有太多的执着，那么就是说当然了，这个欲界天这个我们所说这个天界是一个最高的。其实对于世俗的人来讲呢，当然我们可能更愿意到这个欲界天，因为它是更高一些的。
So with the when we perform defiled virtues, if we aren't making a specific aspiration, then it could end up being reborn in a very high God realm, and that would be, from the perspective of Buddhist practice, would be a problem. So this is one of the reasons why we should always remind ourselves of bodhicitta, and always remind ourselves to make dedications of merit at the end of doing things. And we can also make the specific aspirations that we be reborn in a precious human body to direct that virtue towards that birth. Because if we make that aspiration to be born in a precious human body, then it's more likely that we will do so. Or alternatively, we can make the aspiration to be reborn in a pure realm, such as Amitabha's pure realm.
但是这个就是看你怎么这个发这个愿了。就是这也就是说提醒我们呢，我们在发愿的时候，我们应该呢要记住这个菩提心，然后记得菩提心的这些福报。那么这样的话呢，我们就有可能这个或投生为珍贵的人身。如果我们想投生到这个阿弥陀佛的净土的话呢，我们要发这样的愿。
Okay, so that was the first of the questions. And then the second question comes from the Cantonese discussion group. I'll actually be passing through Hong Kong on Friday. So I'm looking forward to having my chance to exercise my three phrases of Cantonese in Hong Kong on Friday. But that's a little bit of a digression here.
Sorry, come where you're
The second,
passing through Hong Kong.
I'm
哦，
traveling through Hong Kong.
第二个问题是来自这个粤语小组的那个堪布说，他星期五的时候会这个途经香港。
So the second question reads, for a bodhisattva who has attained ultimate bodhicitta, does aspirational and engaged bodhicitta still apply? If so, how do these differ from aspirational and engaged bodhicitta within the context of relative bodhicitta?
这个问题是，对于以正得圣意菩提心的菩萨们，愿行菩提心是否还适用？如果适用的话，这个与世俗菩提心中的愿行菩提心有何不同？
So this, as in response to this, the bodhisattvas who have noble bodhisattvas, those who've reached the first bodhisattva level, when they're in meditation, they are focusing on ultimate bodhicitta. That's ultimate bodhicitta. It's not relative bodhicitta. And so with ultimate bodhicitta, there's no question of aspirational or engaged bodhicitta.
Can we mention when they meditating, they
Yeah,
focus on ultimate bodhicitta?
ultimate bodhicitta. So that is ultimate bodhicitta. And there's no question of relative of aspirational or engaged bodhicitta.
这个当圣菩萨他在这个禅定的时候呢，他主要是专注在这个圣意菩提心上面的，所以也就谈不上这个世俗菩提这个愿菩提心和行菩提心了。
But when you're a first level bodhisattva, you can't rest in meditation all the time. You don't have that power yet. You might be able to rest in meditation for long periods of time from our perspective as ordinary individuals, but they can't rest in meditation constantly. So when they arise from their meditation, then they have relative bodhicitta. And they can they have both the aspirational bodhicitta because they want to achieve enlightenment. And they also have engaged bodhicitta because they're practicing the six transcendences. In particular, on the first bodhisattva level, for example, they're practicing generosity, and then the different transcendences on each of the rest of the bodhisattva levels.
但是对于就是初级的这个对于这个初始的这些菩萨们来讲的话，这个你的禅定的这个功夫还是不够的，所以现在你在修的呢，还是这个世俗的菩提心，也就是你在修行这个愿菩提心和行菩提心。当你发愿有了这个愿菩提心之后呢，你开始逐步的修这个行菩提心，一步接一步的譬如你修这个布施啊，这个一步步的来进行修行。
And then when the bodhisattvas when they awaken to Buddhahood, then once you're a Buddha, you're always resting in meditation. And this is an inconceivable state for all of us, ordinary. It's even inconceivable for a 10th level bodhisattva, let alone people such as ourselves. In general, we would say that they're always meditating on ultimate bodhicitta, but this doesn't mean that they lack compassion in that state either. So it's a state beyond our comprehension.
当这个证得了这个佛果位的话呢，当你已经到了这个实地这个之上的话呢，这些菩萨那么开始他主要就是持续性的在这个修行这个圣意菩提心，呃这个并不是说他修圣意菩提心的时候，他就这个没有这个慈心悲心的，这个是我们现在这个阶段我们是没有办法理解这个他们的那个状况的。
And our last question is also from the Cantonese group, and it goes, how can I truly understand my connection with all sentient beings, especially those I consider enemies or strangers, as well as beings in the other five realms, so that I can cultivate a stable and irreversible bodhicitta toward them?
下面的第三个问题也是来自这个粤语小组的问题是这样的：我如何才能真正的理解我与一切众生的这个因缘，特别是那些我认为是敌人或者是陌生人的众生，以及其他五道的众生，以便我能够对他们培养稳固且不退转的这个菩提心。
So in general, the way to cultivate a connection to other sentient beings is essentially to remember that we're all interdependent. We're all interconnected and linked in various ways that we're not aware of. Traditionally, the way we meditate on this is by remembering that if we've had an infinite number of previous lifetimes, every other sentient being has been our mother in at least once, if not actually an infinite number of times. And in many of those times when they've been our mothers, they have taken care of us and protected us and fed us. And so to remember that, and so when we meet any other sentient being, we don't recognize them now. We may even see them as an enemy now, but that doesn't mean that we haven't been connected in the past. We recognize that and think of the kindness that they must have given us in a past life, and then start to feel gratitude for them. And then from that gratitude, then we develop love, and then when you have love, you can develop compassion.
嗯，我们是要这样思维的，就是说，基本上我们跟所有的众生呢，都是一种相互依存的一个关系的。我们要来思维呢，就是如果我们有无数的这个轮回的话，从无始的轮回以来呢，这所有的一切众生都曾经是我们的母亲，他们曾经照顾过我们，我们一定要思维到他们曾经对我们的恩德，即使目前这个众生，你认为他是 的敌人。但是呢，如果你真正的认知到了所有众生跟你的实际关系的话呢，就是即使目前是怨敌，我们也应该要对他们出于这个报恩的角度，我们也要对他们培养起这个慈心和悲心。
And the other thing we have to remember is that just because we're friendly with one person at one point doesn't mean that we're going to be that way through our entire life. So people are always changing. And if someone's an enemy, they can often become our friend. Friends can become enemy. Even sometimes family members become enemies. Brothers fall out and they get in huge feuds. Or parents and children become estranged and they won't talk to each other. This happens uh, more frequently than we'd like to remember. So any connection we have with someone is always, you start with a good connection, it may change to a bad connection. So when you have a bad connection with someone now, if they appear as a troublemaker or an enemy, or just as a stranger, it's just a question that we've forgotten the connections we've had with them in the past. In any case, this topic is discussed in much more detail in the 8th chapter of this text. We'll speak about it more then, and we'll probably come up across it again as we go through the rest of the text. So we'll be talking about this more. But in general, it's to try to have gratitude for all sentient beings.
就是说，我们要记住呢，就是我们现在的这个状态，它不是一直是，就是它会改变的。就是说，一个敌人呢，他有可能成为你的朋友。即使家里的人、家里成员的话，父母啊、兄弟姊妹啊，有可能跟子女啊，也可能出现疏远，关系变差。这个我们现在所有的很多关系呢，它是持续在变化的。所以目前，如果你认为是你的敌人或者是陌生人，他们可能在某些因缘的情况下呢，会跟你成为一个很好的关系。所以呢，我们要一直记着呢这种恒常的变化。所以关于这个。关于这个课题的话呢，我们在后面第8个章节还会进行阐述。在整个的这个讲解中都还会继续的详细的阐述。所以总而言之，一句话呢，就是我们要对所有的众生都有这种感恩感激之情。
So these are good questions. Thank you for sending them in. And now we will turn to the text. And the point where we've got to is discussing the benefits of engaged bodhicitta in verse 27.
嗯，这个就是所有的问题，非常感谢大家的问题，这些问题都非常的棒。那么现在呢，我们开始进入到今天的讲课，从第27个偈子开始，主要讲这个行菩提心的这个利益。
So the text here reads, if merely intending to benefit is greater than revering the Buddha, what need to speak of striving for the sake of all beings' happiness?
第27个偈子是这样说的：仅思利众生，福圣共诸佛，何况勤精进利乐诸有情。
So here in the first 2 lines, it's speaking about how wonderful aspirational bodhicitta is. If merely intending to benefit is greater than revering the Buddha, if you have the motivation of aspirational bodhicitta, that's even a greater motivation than just making an aspiration to, or making an offering or paying homage to the Buddha out of either loving kindness or compassion or another positive motivation.
这个前面2句话呢，仅思利众生，福圣共诸佛。这个呢，它主要就讲了这个愿菩提心的它的功德利益是有发愿菩提心，这是一个多么美好的事情。就是说，你仅仅思维利益众生发愿，发这样的一个愿菩提心的话呢，就已经远远它的功德远远超过了你这个供养诸佛。
So in comparison to them, that as we spoke about last week, the aspirational bodhicitta has incredible benefits, but in comparison to that, what need to speak of striving for the sake of all beings happiness? So once you actually put it into action and you start engaging in the training of the Bodhisattva. You engage in the practice of transcendent generosity. You give things with the wish that because of giving, making that gift, that the being that the recipient may achieve Buddhahood, or you practice discipline in order to achieve Buddhahood. Once you engage in actual bodhicitta, that's so much more beneficial. It's hardly necessary to speak about how much more beneficial it is.
嗯，那么上周呢，我们已经讲过了很多关于愿菩提心的这些功德利益。那么现在呢，如果我们就是上面讲发愿菩提心都有这么多的功德，那么如果你将这个愿心真正的转化成为这个实际的这个行动，行菩提心来这个饶益众生的话，你真正的去修持这个六度万行的话，那么你这个功德。将是比愿菩提心更加殊胜，是完全无法计量的。
So this verse is really talking about how because the engaged bodhicitta is associated with actually acting, actually doing, it's much more beneficial than aspirational bodhicitta. The next three verses speak about how engaged bodhicitta has much greater merit because it also does many more things for other sentient beings.
这个因为这个行菩提心呢，是你真真正正的开始，就是有行动了，开始呃这个呃这个修习，开始来修这个菩提心了。这样呢，它的这个功德是完全大于这个愿菩提心的。那么接下来的三个偈次呢，就开始要讲这个行菩提心，它真正的这个功德利益在哪里？
So the verse reads, "They wish to cast off suffering, but rush towards suffering itself. They wish for happiness, but deluded, crush their own pleasure like a foe."
28集是这样说到：众生欲除苦，奈何苦更增；愚人随求乐，毁乐如灭仇。
So samsaric beings want to be happy, but they don't really know or they want to avoid suffering. They don't want to have pain, but they don't know how to avoid it. And what they think will free them from suffering are actually causes of further suffering. And so they're rushing towards suffering itself. They are hungry, and so they think they need to steal something, or they need to kill something to eat, or they engage in other non-virtues, and as a result, they just bring more suffering upon themselves in their attempts to avoid suffering.
众生本来是非常就是想要离苦的，想从这种苦难中摆脱出去，但是呢，实际上所做的行为呢，反而是不是更奔向了就是导致了更多的苦的形成。为什么呢？比如说有些人因为饥饿呢，开始出现偷盗啊或者杀生的行为，或者是说就是在轮回中的这个众生呢，做更多很多这个不如法的这个行为，这所有的这一切呢，他本来是想除去苦，希望是除去苦难的，反而变成了追逐这个苦难。
And they want happiness, but they don't know how to bring themselves happiness. And so, out of delusion, out of not knowing what they should do or what they should avoid doing, they engage in things that destroy all their own pleasure. So, this is all their own happiness, all their pleasures, and they bring them suffering instead. And so, this is the general state of ordinary sentient beings because they don't know what they should do that will bring them happiness, and they don't know what they should not do. They do not know what actions will cause suffering. They make everything worse for themselves instead of improving their situations.
嗯，就是这个无名的这个众生呢，就是是非常渴求这个快乐的，是追逐这个期盼幸福快乐的。但是由于他们的由于这个无名和愚痴的话呢，使得呢使得他把这个快乐的因呢 整个是像仇敌一样被碾碎了，反而就是说，这个对于这个凡人来讲呢，主要的原因就是说他不知道该做什么，不该做什么，所以他的这个所谓的离苦，这个得乐的很多这些行为呢，实际上让他目前的状况变得更糟糕，而不是有所改善。
Actually, this is a verse where we really have to think about it for ourselves. We have to, I mean, we have to really take a good look at our own actions because, I mean, it's so easy to get bad habits and to uh, do things that cause harm, that cause harm to ourselves or others, out of just some sort of attachment. I mean, even you can think about it just on the level of health. You know, we uh, want to do things that are going to make ourselves feel good. We want to eat well, and then we eat so well that we make ourselves fat and get diabetes as a result. You know, or that's on a short term, or we find ourselves acting out of bad habits and doing things that we shouldn't do, or we think that we we get into conflict with our Dharma friends, our Dharma sisters, and our Dharma brothers because we have some idea about how something should be done, and we end up creating a lot of problems for ourselves and others. It's really important for us to actually look at ourselves and make sure that we aren't doing things that we shouldn't do, that we are trying to be kind, compassionate, keep our discipline, and in particular, do our best to get along with everyone get along with everyone, especially our Dharma brothers and sisters.
我们现在呢就要想想我们自己的这个，回顾一下我们自己的行为，因为我们呢就是做很多事情都是由于这个坏的习气的这个所牵引呢，导致我们做了很多的对自己对他人都是毫无益处也是有害的事情。这一切呢，当然主要是由于这个我执所造成的，譬如说。我们这个日常生活中吃的特别好，结果最后变胖了，然后有可能还会出现这个糖尿病。这当然这是一个很短期的这么一个问题。但是长期的呢，就是说，如果我们总是被这些坏的习气所牵引的，那么就会造成更多的这个伤害。譬如我们在寺院中的这些道友之间、法友之间，有的时候大家呢就是很坚持自己的自我主张、自己的想法，这样呢，实际上反而会为自己和他人呢都造成了很大的困扰和问题。实际上我们在日常生活中呢，大家应该和睦相处，应该对待其他的人，无论是道友还是其他的人，应该有一种慈悲的和这个平和的心。
And then when we see how easy it is for ourselves to do these things, and we even have at least had some education, we've at least heard about, what negative acts are and that we shouldn't do these things, then for people who've had no such education, who no one has told them what they should do or shouldn't do, it's even harder for them to do what is right and to do what is good that will bring them benefit. And so when we think about this is a real, by understanding how hard it is for us, for ourselves to act properly and always speak properly, be kind and gentle, then we can realize how difficult it is for other sentient beings and uh, how this creates so much suffering for them. And then we can rouse more compassion for them as well.
这个就是我们至少呢，虽然我们也有很多这个不好的习气，但是至少呢，我们现在还有这样的一个教育，就是大家能够认识到说我们的这个恶行呢会导致这个恶果恶业，呃，但是呢，我们要想到还有其他的很多人完全不了解这种因果关系，没有接受到这样的一种教育，那么他们完全不知道什么是正确的，什么是错误的，什么样的行为是真正能够利益到他们自己的。嗯， 所以，既然呢，对于我们受过这样教育的人，我们都觉得很就是来来修行这种有爱呀、这个和善呢，就是这个都对于我们来讲还都挺难的。那么对于其他的人来讲，我们应该就是升起更大的这个悲心来想到就是这个对于他们来讲是多么的难。
And so it's important for us when we see people or other beings that are doing things that are just in the end going to cause themselves more suffering. It's important for us to, instead of having um, judgment for them, instead of saying bad person or anything like that, it's important for us to use this as, from understanding our own experience, it's important to use that as a way to generate even more compassion for them, understanding that they don't have any control over what they're doing. They don't know. Even we who have some understanding find it hard. And for other people with no understanding, what chance do they have? And so this is really, if we think about this way, there's absolutely no need to judge anyone for their actions. Instead, we need to have compassion for what they have done.
既然就是非常我们现在呢，就是要谨记住呢，就是说其他的这些人，其他的这些众生呢，他们现在由于不明白这个因果关系的话，所以他们呢就是受到了很大的这个苦，所以呢，如果他们真的有什么不好的行为的话呢，我们最好不要就是来评判这个人是个好人坏人，不要升起这样的就是评判别人的这个念头，而取而代之的呢，我们是应该就是回顾一下我们自己的经验，就是我们既然对于我们这么难能改掉这个恶习的话，那么对于这些完全没有受过这种因果教育的这些人来讲呢，那就是更难了。我们应该要更理解他们的这个处境，所以呢，我们要由此呢，我们要升起这个对他们的这个大悲之心，而不是来这个评判他们是对是错。
So when we see these sentient beings who are deprived of happiness, as it says in this line, for those deprived of happiness who suffer many miseries. So when we see people who are in acting out of ignorance and causing themselves more suffering, and we feel that compassion, then it's bodhicitta, it's engaged bodhicitta that allows us as bodhisattvas in training or beginning bodhisattvas, or even as noble throughout the bodhisattva path. This is what allows us to bring benefit to them. It's that compassion, seeing that we feel compassion. It's the engaged bodhicitta that allows us to actually benefit them.
嗯，所以这个29计的话，就是说，我们应该就是意识到，就是我们现在这样做，产生这种大的悲心的话，对于这些受苦的众生的话呢，实际上是我们在训练自己这个菩萨行的这个道路上，这个我们的一种训练。看不，
Mm.
I
Maybe
think
I wasn't clear. So basically, when we see such beings and we have compassion, it is because of compassion and then bodhicitta. Then it is because of the engaged bodhicitta, of actually using engaged bodhicitta, that we will be able to benefit these beings.
就是我们通过这个行菩提心，我们对他首先是有这个大悲心，然后接着我们通过这个行菩提心，真正的利益到这些众生。
So this satisfies with every pleasure and severs every suffering. So it's the engaged bodhicitta that is able to help bring sentient beings to happiness. Engaged bodhicitta, when you have engaged bodhicitta, you have loving kindness. You have the wish to bring sentient beings happiness. And so you do what you can to bring them happiness, to bring them every pleasure that they need.
刚才就是上面讲的这个是指的我们要有这个 悲心，这个大悲心呢，把这个众生从苦中脱离出来。那么下面讲的这个足以众安乐呢，这个是讲的就是说菩提心呢可以给这个众生带来无量的安乐。那么在这儿呢。我们就是要有这个大悲心，我们要通过有这个大悲心呢，愿无量无边的众生得到这个快乐。
And when you have the engaged bodhicitta, you also have a lot of compassion, and that compassion and the bodhicitta motivate you to act in ways that help people help cease their suffering. Maybe it's some physical thing that you can do to help to cure them, or maybe there's some other method that you use to remove their suffering. But because you have the compassion that comes along with engaged bodhicitta, you're able to sever or stop all the suffering that other beings experience.
嗯，这是因为我们这个行菩提心，我们在行菩提心的过程中有这个大悲心呢，这样的呢，你就能够真正的帮助这个遣除众生之苦。这个他的之苦呢，有可能是一种就是身体上的苦，也可以是其他形式上的苦。也就是通过我们这个行大悲心的话呢，能够解除众生之苦。
So this continues into the next verse. It says, "It also will dispel delusion. How could there be such good as this? How could there be a friend like this? How could there be such merit as this?"
第30句说到更复尽其痴，宁有等此善？安得似此有？其有如此夫？
So at the same time as you have engaged bodhicitta, you also have prajna. You have the discernment of knowing how to help sentient beings so that they can overcome their ignorance or delusion. So in this way, the engaged bodhicitta, it has the loving kindness that helps us bring beings to happiness. It has compassion that helps us free them from suffering, and it also has the prajna that helps us bring dispel delusion. So there's nothing that could be as good as like it's like the best friend, the greatest merit that we could possibly have.
那么这个菩提心呢，现在就有3个很大的特点。第一个呢，就是说，刚才我们说的大慈心能够帮助这个众生带来无量的快乐。那么你有大悲心，升起大悲心呢，能够解除众生的无限的痛苦。那么在这个第30记里呢，就讲到，当你行菩提心的时候呢，你就会升起这个大智慧。那么这个智慧的话呢，能够帮助众生遣除他们的愚痴和无明。如果菩提心有这么多的这个大的功德的话，就是在这个偈子中就讲到说，他还能够去除众生的无明愚痴，哪里还有比得上菩提心这样的善法呢？哪里还有像菩提心一样能够帮助到众生的亲友呢？哪里还有比菩提心更广大的福德呢？
So then the next stanza speaks about another reason why engaged bodhicitta is so much superior is because when you act out of engaged bodhicitta, you aren't expecting anything in return. And so this says, if to reciprocate a kind deed is praiseworthy for a short while, what need to speak of bodhisattvas who do good unsolicited?
接下来的第31记呢，讲了这个菩提心的另一个大的一个功德一个特点，就是它是不求回报的。在这里呢，31记是这样说的：若人酬恩师，尚且应称赞，何况未受托菩萨自乐为。
So normally when people do things to help each other, there's usually the expectation you do get something in return. If you are a doctor or a nurse or something like that, you expect you're going to get a paycheck. If you do something directly for someone else, if you do it out of a favor, then you're hoping for a favor in return. It's like, you rub my back, I'll rub yours.
通常这个世间的人呢，当我们帮助别人的时候，我们是期待是有回报的。比如说，如果你是一个医生或是护士的话，你帮助了病患，那么你的工作你期待是有薪水的，那么如果你给了别人一个很大的帮忙，帮别人渡了难关，或者一个很大的帮助之后呢，当然你期待着别人会 就是给你回报。
So sometimes, like, even we don't necessarily say, I'll do that in return for this, but we kind of expect it. You know, you do something nice and you have this hope. Maybe they'll do something nice for me. Maybe they'll say something nice about me. Maybe they'll like me. I'm helping out in this way, and then everyone's going to like me. You're hoping for something in return, right? This is the way we normally we do it. We always want, and sometimes we're not even aware that we want it, but we do. And then when no one says something nice, you do something good, and no one says something about it, then you get disappointed.
嗯，其实我们嘴上可能并没有说哦，我期待着别人的知恩图报，但是实际上呢，我们在心里都是有这样的一个期待的。比方说，我们对谁说了好话，我做了好，比方说我们对谁很好，那么我们当然期待这个人对我们也很好，或者是说一些很好的话给我们听，或者是说他很喜欢我，或者大家因为我的行为都很喜欢我。我们其实是有期待值的，只是自己可能内心都没有意识到自己是有期待值的。直到当你的行为没有得到被别人认可的时候，你就感到无限的失望。
And this is especially noticeable when you are dealing with Tibetan lamas, because Tibetan lamas, they don't, like in English, we talk about giving people validation. Tibetan lamas don't give any validation. There have been multiple times when either Trangpa Rinpoche or the Karmapa has said, you should do this. And so I do this. And I bring it back to them. I say, see, look what I've done. And I'm waiting for them to say, good. I look at it and, yeah, okay. Don't say anything.
这个就是特别在我们这个藏传佛教的，这个西藏的喇嘛们，就是这一点就体现的很明显，就是说他们不会就是说因为你是做了什么而这个马上就给你一个认可，比方说像这个创古仁波切啊或者其他的喇嘛，有的时候他们告诉我，哦，你需要做这件事情，然后当然我做了，你会认为哦，他们可能至少会说，认可你一下。但是他们可能就是看看你，OK，你做了，好，你做了，就是这样就结束了。
And so that's it. They tell you to do something, you work hard to do it, and then you don't get any acknowledgement at the end. And you probably, I mean, you may find this in the monastery too, because there's a very Tibetan sometimes. So if you're off, you know, trying to, what do we say? If you do something and you're expecting some sort of a good response and then there's no response and you get disappointed, it's not, it's nothing personal. It's cultural. It's totally cultural.
嗯、就是如果这个喇嘛们让你们做了什么事情的话，你非常急切的把它做了，但是可能做了就是做了，也没有得到什么认可。你就是如果没有任何回应的，当你做了一个事情没有任何回应的话呢，你也别认为这是针对你个人的，这就是一个文化的现象，这就是他们文化中的这个。
In any case, when you're a bodhisattva who's acting on engaged bodhicitta, you don't expect any of that. You aren't looking for anyone to say, oh, what a wonderful person. In fact, sometimes it's even worse when people tell you what a wonderful person. It's better if people don't notice or they don't express anything or they criticize you for it. That's even better. But when you want something good out of it, and then you get someone says, "Oh, that was nice," and what happens? You get proud about it. You say, "Look, see, people like me," and that's that's kind of the opposite of bodhicitta. So with the engaged bodhicitta, when you truly are acting out of bodhicitta, the other person acknowledges it or not, doesn't matter. You're not doing it for anything in return. You're doing it solely to bring benefit to other sentient beings.
就是所以说，如果你真正的行是一个菩萨行菩萨行的时候呢，其实你什么都不会想的， 如果有人赞赏你，你做什么你是不求回报的；如果有人因为你的行为而赞美你说啊，你是一个太好的人了，可能还并不是件好的事情。相反的，如果有人批评，给你指正出你行为中呢有哪些不妥之处呢，可能是更好的。因为呢，当有人这个夸奖你，你是多么完美、多么好的时候呢，你很有可能会升起这个我慢的心，会骄傲起来。这样的话呢，你会就是期待着别人喜欢你，这个实际上是跟这个修菩提心是反其道而行的。一个真正的修菩提心的人呢，别人认不认可你，这个根本不重要，因为你行菩提心，你这个发菩提心，行菩萨行的目的呢，你是为了利益他人，跟别人认不认可你没有什么关系。
So then the next stanza starts speaking, the next two stanzas speak about how the different ways that actions we do out of engaged bodhicitta are much greater. And so it begins in verse 32, speaking about sort of our ordinary types of generosity, generosity that we'd often think of as being great generosity. And so this verse reads, people extol as doing something good those who provide a few with regular meals, donating scornfully for a short time plain food that satisfies for half a day.
接下来32和33这两个句子呢，它主要就是讲了这个行菩提心，从另外两个方面讲行菩提心的它的利益是多么的广大。那么第32个这个句子呢，它主要就是讲了一个这个我们普通人的这个普通的布施的善举，这个这个句子中写到：偶被危劣时，结施少众生，令得半日饱，人尽为善事。
So here, um, if someone were to donate food to feed some number of people for like a week or a month or something like that, everyone would say it would be really great. For example, if someone were to sponsor all the meals at the monastery for a month, everyone would say that that would be a great way to do it. Or if you sponsor meals for the homeless for a month, everyone would say that's an excellent thing to do.
就是说，在这里呢，想讲到，就是说，如果你这个这个是这个呃呃呃 donate 食物的话，就是一个星期或者一个月的话，比如说你给寺院，你给寺院这个这一个月的时间，你这个要 donate 食物的话呢，或者是说你给无家可归的人，你这一个月的时间都帮助他们，给他们提供食物的话呢，这个就是大家都会觉得这是一个善举。
But when you do that, for example, say you've going to a homeless shelter and you're feeding 100 people for a week. So you're feeding 100 people, but that's really not that many people. I mean, there are 8 billion people in this on this earth alone, let alone in all the other universes. So it's, there are fewer recipients of your donation, of your gift.
就是说，咱们举个例子说，如果假设你到这个无家可归的中心，你一个星期给100个无家可归的人提供了食物，这个听起来是已经很不错的一个善举。但是如果你想想，这个世界上有80亿的人，你这100个人跟这个整个世界上的人比起来说的话，就是太微不足道了。
So that's the first thing. There are 5 areas. This is the 5 things that make it lesser. This is the first thing. It's just a few people. The second thing is that all you're giving them is food. You're giving them regular meals. I mean, food is fine, but that's all you're giving them. It's not any more than that.
嗯， 这个呢，就是刚刚我们讲呢，我们就是这个接下来就是32和33计呢，我们是会把这个菩提心和这个普通的这个布施做一个区别，来比较。刚才我们讲了第一点的比较，一共有5点。第一点的比较呢，就是说普通的布施呢，你只是针对了少数的众生，然后接下来呢，就是说你所布施的这个东西的话呢，也就是一个普通的一餐而已。
So you've got a few people, you're doing it for regular meals. Those are two things that are lesser. You're doing it for a short period of time. That's the third thing that's lesser. And the fourth thing is that you're doing it scornfully. It's because, like, oh, they're homeless people and you don't really like them. You're doing it because it's a good thing to do, but you don't really like it. And so you're looking down on them. You have a lot of pride. You're giving it scornfully. So that's the fourth thing that makes it inferior.
那么刚才我们比较了，首先这个接受者对境是少数的人，然后接下来呢，你所施予的这个物品呢，第二点呢也是就是仅仅就是一餐而已。第三个我们比较的点呢，就是这个时间。那么时间你也是偶尔的，就是也少量的这个给予，一个短时间内的少量的给予。那么接下来呢，第四点呢，就是这个布施的态度。布施的态度呢，可能就是你给予的时候也是蛮轻蔑的、不屑一顾的。比如说像这些无家可归者，你可能会有点小看他们，觉得说，我也并不是很喜欢你们无家可归的人。我之所以给你们布施的话呢，其实也就是因为这是一件善行，我需要这样做。但是你可能还是有些布施的时候有一些轻蔑的。
And so then the fifth thing is that it's got less, it's the benefit is not so great. It satisfies them for half a day. 6 hours after eating, they're going to be hungry again. So there are these five ways. It's a few people. The period of time is short. What you're giving is unimportant. The action is kind of inferior because you're doing it out of pride, and the benefit is short. So this, and still people extol this. Extol means to praise. People say that it's really great that you're doing this, even though it's inferior in these five ways.
那么最后一点，第5点呢，就是讲到这个普通布施的这个利益，这个利益也是非常小的。像刚才你不过就是解决了这无家可归人的半日之饱，这个利益是很有限的，可能6个小时之后，他又会觉得他好饿呀。所以呢，这边呢，就是再重新重复一遍，就是从时间的角度，是一个普通人的布施，就是一个很短时间的，非常偶然的。然后你的对境呢，也就是一个少数的众生。那么，然后你布施的东西，也就是仅仅就是这个一餐，非常有限的。然后你的态度也是蛮轻蔑的，那么你的功德利益呢，你的这个利益呢，也不过就是解决了半日之饱。就是即使是这样的话呢，这个世上的人看你做了这些，依然他还会说：“哎呀，这是一个多么大的善举啊！”然后把你敬为这个善事。
And so the next verse talks about, well, how is it when you've got a bodhisattva, someone who's doing this out of engaged bodhicitta? What need to speak of those who always give to beings of untold number for a long time, the sublime happiness of the Sugatas, fulfilling every one of their desires?
第33计是这样说道：何况恒施语，无边有情众，善事无上乐，满彼一切愿。
So with a regular donation, a gift here, a donation, you're giving a few people. Here it's beings of untold number, infinite numbers of beings. With the regular donation, it's just for a few times. Here it's always give for a long time. And in the regular donation, it's just like food. And here it's like fulfilling every one of their desires. So the things that you're giving are superior.
这个刚才说到这个，普通的布施只是布施给少数的众生。那么这边呢，你真正如果有菩提心的话，你菩提心的对境这个受益者呢，他是无量无边的有情众生。那么你普通的布施呢是短时间的、偶然的。那么这个当你发了这个菩提心的时候呢，你的这个 你的这个是恒长的，这个是一个长久不变的持续的一个发心，想利益众生。那么刚才说了，这个普通的布施呢，就是你有限的这个世间的这个财物，那么在菩提心这边呢，你是要满足这个轮回里这个众生的这个所有的愿望。
And so then the other thing is, with the regular action, there's a bit of pride. You're doing it a little bit scornfully, or you're doing a little bit of pride that you're giving something good. Here, the bodhisattvas, they're giving it out of bodhicitta. They have no pride, no scorn of anyone else. In fact, they recognize the great value of it. They recognize that other sentient beings have Buddha nature. So they recognize how that they're all the same, essentially. And the benefit is is greater because what you're actually giving is the sublime happiness of the Sugatas, which is bringing sentient beings to Buddhahood.
那么在普通的这个布施中呢，你是带着骄傲的心来做这件事情的，但是真正的这个菩提心呢，就是你是给予这个众生菩提心，这是一个无差别的，这是一个是这样的一个菩提心。同时，因为呢，你认识到这个众生皆具有佛性，我们彼此是一样的，所以你的这个菩提心它是公正的、无差别的。然后这个说到利益呢，这个菩提心的利益是非常广大的，因为呢，它最终呢，最大的利益呢，就是要把这个众生带领到这个成佛之路，也就是呢，能够得到这个善事的无上安乐，也是究竟的成佛的安乐。
So what this verse is really talking about is not only the benefits of engaged bodhicitta, but also the greatness of bodhisattvas, how amazing bodhisattvas are, that they're able to act in such a way.
这一句子呢，它不仅是讲了这个菩提心的巨大的功德利益，它其实更主要的也是给我们指出来，这个菩萨是多么的伟大，就是菩萨他们这个是多么的令人赞叹他们的行为。
And so then the next couple of verses speak about um, not only is it just that the bodhisattvas are great beings, but also because they are great beings, then when we do something to them, whether it be harmful to them or whether it be beneficial to them, it's even more powerful. And so this is first in terms of the negative. When you do something bad to a bodhisattva, this is what is spoken about in verse 34, which reads, "Someone who rouses a malicious thought towards such a patron, offspring of the victors, will dwell in hell as many eons as the count of their bad thoughts," the sage has said.
就是菩萨是伟大的，那么接下来的这三个句子呢，主要就要讲说，如果我们对菩萨，如果做了一些无论是善行还是善业还是恶业的话呢，那么这个你所受到的果报呢，将是非常巨大的。第34季呢，现在主要就讲，如果你对菩萨造成了恶业，它会有什么一个结果？34季是这样说的：博施诸佛子，若人生恶心，佛言彼坠欲心久如心数劫。
So this is actually comes from a sutra that the Buddha taught, where he said to Manjushri, that basically anyone who thinks of a bodhisattva with malice or with irritation or with anger is accumulating incredible misdeeds, and that they will dwell in hell as many eons as the number of their bad thoughts. So for each bad thought, there's like an eon. So if you have two bad thoughts, that's 2 eons in hell, or so it's really quite serious. If you even just think a bad thought about the bodhisattvas, let alone actually doing something to them.
这个第30次记呢，实际上是引用了一个佛经，也就是佛陀对这个文殊菩萨所讲的一段呢。它主要就是讲，如果呢，你对这个菩萨大乘佛子这个造业的话呢，这个人呢会坠入地狱，受到果报的时间是多长呢？这个就是你升起了多少刹那的恶心呢，你就会要堕入多少大劫的地狱。假如说你有两个对这个佛子造了有两个恶念的话呢，那么你就要堕两个大劫的地狱。
And the reason for this is that it's because bodhisattvas become Buddhas. And then Buddhas do all the things that bring happiness to all sentient beings. So if you do something that prevents a bodhisattva, that harms a bodhisattva, or even if you think about doing such a thing, that is causes incredible harm to the Buddhas, which in turn harms innumerable numbers of sentient beings. So this is why it is such a strong negative action.
这原因是这样的，就是说菩萨呢，终是在成佛的这个道路上的。那么，如果你做了恶业，阻止了菩萨或者伤害了菩萨这个成佛的话呢，那么你实际上真正的是造了业，对佛造了业，那么其结果就是对无量无边的众生造了业。
Um, you might also wonder why is it? I mean, why is it? Because we also know the what do we say? You also might wonder, well, it's said in the scriptures that if you hurt the Buddha, if you draw blood from the Buddha, if you injure the Buddha, that this will cause you to be reborn in the lowest of the hells, and you'll live there for an eon. So then you might wonder, why is it that that has less of an effect than just thinking about the bodhisattvas, where you'll be reborn in hells for as many eons as you have thoughts.
Sorry, did you mean has if we have bad thought was Bodhisattva, and then there's
Right. So
less
if you
means
have bad thoughts to the bodhisattva, you dwell in hell for one eon for every bad thought you have. So you have five
okay.
bad thoughts. Now, if
Mm.
instead of just having you dwell for 5 eons, but if you actually harm the Buddha and draw blood from the Buddha with a malicious intent, you end up spending 1 eon in the lowest and worst of the hells, but 1 eon. So why is it that thinking about the bodhisattvas is worse?
就是说，如果你要是对这个菩萨的话，刚才我们讲了，如果你对他产生这个恶念的话呢，你有一个恶念就会有一大截的地狱的苦。如果你有两个的话，就有两个大截的地狱之苦。那么这个经文中还同时讲到说，如果你是伤害佛的话呢，那么你就会投生在这个地狱的最底层，但是只是一个结束。为什么就是好像伤害菩萨反而受到的这个果报更严重呢？
So the reason is that actually the Buddhas are beyond being hurt. You can't hurt a Buddha. There's no way to hurt a Buddha. When a Buddha shows the sign, when a Buddha looks like they've been hurt, they've not actually been hurt. They're showing that in order to make people, to teach something to people. It's not actually harm to the Buddha. There's no way you can harm the Buddha because the Buddha is beyond all of that. But bodhisattvas aren't. And so that's why the karmic result is stronger.
这是因为呢，实际上佛陀呢，我们是没有办法伤害到佛陀的。佛是不会被伤害到的。他之所以偶然会显现，他只是把他受到伤害这个显现给我们呢，实际上是要通过这种方式来给我们一个教导。就是尤其它是一个通过这种方式来教导众生的。但是菩萨是真正的，如果你伤害菩萨的话，菩萨是会受到伤害的。所以呢，这就为什么你伤害菩萨的果报是更严重的。
And the other thing is that we have to think about what we mean by bodhisattvas in this verse. People, and here it's not only speaking about the great bodhisattvas on the levels. It's also talking about beginner bodhisattvas, anyone who's started practicing engaged bodhicitta in particular. And the problem is that we as ordinary beings don't know who those bodhisattvas are. I mean, when you go to the Dharma Center and you know that your Dharma friends have taken the Bodhisattva vow, then you know that they're bodhisattvas. So you have to be really careful in the Dharma Center. It's really important to look at all of your Dharma brothers and sisters and say, oh, they're my Dharma friends, and they've also taken the Bodhisattva vows. I really need to think positively about them.
嗯，那么现在我们接着要想想，就是什么是菩萨？这个菩萨呢，它有这个就是大菩萨、登地的菩萨，那也有像我们这样的初学菩萨。这个所以说呢，这个你这个到这个佛法中心修行的道场的时候呢，你并不知道哪一些人他是就是受了菩萨戒的，所以呢，你要在这个佛法中心的时候呢，就应该要大家是非常要团结友爱的。
And not even that. I mean, when you go out and you go someplace, you have no idea who you are meeting and whether they've taken the bodhisattva vow, whether they're a bodhisattva. I mean, you can't even really tell whether animals are bodhisattvas or not, because it's quite possible that there might be a great bodhisattva who's showing up in an animal form in order to benefit you. So what this is a reminder about is how important it is for us always to think about others positively, even when they do stupid things, even when they do things that we don't like. It's important to always try to be kind and understanding, and to think of other beings as positively as we can, because they all have Buddha nature. They may well be bodhisattvas. And so it's important for us to try to have as pure view of other sentient beings as we can.
就是除了这个佛法中心的话呢，那么你去到其他的任何什么地方的话呢，你根本没有办法了解了知你遇到的人是不是已经受了菩萨戒。呃，同时呢，像动物的话，其实有些动物的话，你也并不知道它是不是有一些伟大的菩萨，就此生它以动物的这个状态来度化众生，它只是这个以动物的这个形态出现。所以说呢。我们要非常小心自己的一言一行，我们要一直呢都是要有一个正向的思维，一个正念和一个善行，我们不要就是说觉得别人是很傻的，做的事情很糟糕的，我们应该对所有的人都是要很友善的，要理解其他，要尽量的理解其他的人，因为从根本上，所有的其他的众生，我们都是具有同样的佛性的。
So this is actually just a reminder of how important for us it is to always think of others well. Beyond that, anytime we see something negative in someone else, we're actually only seeing our own faults. It's all projections. Often we're misinterpreting things. We think that someone's doing something wrong, but actually we just don't understand what they're doing. Um, and so it's always important to look at other beings as positively as possible. If you want to make any progress in Dharma practice, it's important to view everyone uh, in as positive light as possible. And then when they do things that seem bad, to at least have understanding and be forgiving, and not to get angry or criticize other people about anything.
嗯，就是说，我们呢，其他人我们要知道，就是每个人都是非常重要的哈。当我们看到别人的一些不好的行为举止的时候呢，其实就是我们看到了我们自己。因为我们常讲就是说，你看到你所见的，实际上是反映了你所想的。那么就是实际上你所见到的，你所理解到、看到、你认为的很多都是误解，都是你自己所想出来的。所以说呢，我们在修法的这个过程中呢，我们要始终保持一个清净观，对任何人、任何事情都要有一个清净观。即使我们确实看到有些人做的不太好、不如法，做了坏的事情的话呢，我们也要尽量的去理解、去原谅，而不是总是 纠缠不休，采取批评的态度。
So, in this verse, Shantideva has been scaring us with the bad consequences of thinking badly of the bodhisattvas, but it also works the other way as it goes, as it says in the next stanza. But those,
34
yeah, but the results of someone feeling faith proliferate in far greater abundance. With bodhisattvas, even grave events don't bring misdeeds, good naturally increases.
刚才这个34记的话呢，就是祭天菩萨就是告诫了我们，这个是对，如果你对菩萨做这个不好恶行的话呢，那么有多么巨大的这个恶的果报会产生。第35记呢，它主要就是讲了这个，如果你对菩萨这个有善行会怎么样呢？35记是这样说的：若人生尽性，得果较前增；佛子随逢难，善增罪不生。
So, actually, it's as it says in the sutra, even though there's the danger if you have a malicious thought toward a bodhisattva that you'll be in hell for an eon. If you have thoughts of faith, actually the benefits are even greater than that, far greater than that. It's and you'll become like you'll be able to bring great benefit to all sentient beings. It's a really powerful source of faith. And if you think about it, the reason why it is such a powerful source of faith is because when you feel faith towards a bodhisattva, then that is also a cause of you becoming a Buddha. And then when you become a Buddha, you'll be able to bring great benefit to all sentient beings. So it's a very, very powerful act. And so it's always important for us to try to train in seeing people with faith and devotion, pure view, not only because of the problems of the negative problems if we see people otherwise, but also because of the great benefits that this will bring us and all other sentient beings.
嗯，这个这也是同时是佛经里所讲的，就是如果你有恶业的话呢，对菩萨造恶业会进入这个无数劫的这个地狱。那么如果你对菩萨发了这个生了清净的信心的话呢，那么这个善报它的之长久之广大呢，是远远超过前面这个你的恶行所导致的这个恶业。这是为什么呢？就是说，这里就提到了这个信心、前进心的这个巨大力量。当你呢，就是对这个菩萨升起了这个信心，那么你就是已经就是等于说你就是对佛升起，因为菩萨终将是成佛的，所以这个你等于对佛升起了这个巨大的佛陀升起了巨大的信心和前进心，那么这个利益是相当之广大的。
Now, the second half of the stanza, the lines that go, with bodhisattvas, even grave events don't bring misdeeds, good naturally increases. What this is speaking about is that um, when bad things happen to bodhisattvas, and bad things can happen, sometimes it's that there is a general karmic situation that causes bad things to happen. Sometimes it's because someone has done something bad to them. When that bad thing happened, for the bodhisattva, this is not a bad thing. The bodhisattva thinks to themselves, oh, this is an opportunity for me to practice. This is excellent. This is wonderful. And they aren't disturbed by it. Even no matter how badly they're injured or even killed, they're not disturbed by it. Instead, it makes them want to try harder to benefit that sentient being who's done something to them, or it wants to make them try harder to bring benefit to all sentient beings. And because of this, it naturally increases the amount of good. So the merit becomes far stronger for the bodhisattva. So the bodhisattva is actually delighted when there are difficult situations rather than being upset. They're even more happy about it.
就是这个如果就是说这个菩萨是遇到了这个违缘的话，遇到障碍的话，这个它可能是有很多原因造成的这个违缘和障碍，它也可能是由于这个业力，或者是有些人确实对这个菩萨做了这个不好的事情。 那么这个菩萨实际上他不会把这些障碍，就是看作是一个很难的事情，他会反而把它看作是一个修行的一个很好的机会。所以，如果菩萨受到了就是真正的被受伤了，或者甚至被杀了，就是说，但是呢，他呢，实际上呃，就是说，在遇到各种违缘的时候呢，他并不会消极，他反而会更加的精进，升起更大的信心。他有就是更渴望、强烈的渴望呢，这个就是来帮助这个净化这些伤害他的这个众生。
So these are the great benefits of bodhicitta. I mean, the you have the great bodhicitta with its great benefits, and because bodhicitta is so incredible, then the bodhisattvas who have this bodhicitta are also really incredible beings. And so, for this reason, Shantideva says in the last, prostrates to them again. He pays homage to them in last stanza, saying, I prostrate to the bodies of those in whom this jewel, the sublime attitude, is born. Even harming them will lead to happiness. I go for refuge to the well springs of joy.
就是我们前面讲了这些菩提心的巨大功德呢，那么接下来这个就是这个菩萨那么就是非常值得这个赞叹的。所以呢，在最后的这36偈的时候呢，这个祭天菩萨就讲了这样一段话，说：何人生此心？我理彼人心，谁令愿离乐，归尽彼乐园。
So here in the third line, it says, even harming them will lead to happiness. So what this means is that when someone harms a bodhisattva, the bodhisattva gets an even stronger wish to help them. That the actual harm that this person does to the bodhisattva is like a connection. And so then the bodhisattva really wants to help that sentient being, and it will eventually, that because of that, that makes the connection that the bodhisattva will be able to bring them to happiness in the future. So this is what we mean. So you can't, even if you do something bad to a bodhisattva, it always ends up turning out well in the end because you're making a connection. And the bodhisattva doesn't mind if you hurt them or not because they have such strong bodhicitta.
嗯，这个第三句呢，就讲到说呢，这个就是说谁能令仇者得安乐？也就是说，我们刚才说了，如果这个有人想试图伤害这个菩萨的话呢，菩萨反而刚才说过，菩萨反而会把这当做一个机会，他更精进的修行他的菩提心。那么就是这样的，因为菩萨，当你伤害菩萨的时候，菩萨呢反而更就是有着更大的这个力量，想要这个心这个心呢，想要来帮助你，这样的你跟菩萨在某种情况，在这种情况下，实际上建立了一种连接，有一种因缘，你跟菩萨反而产生了这样的一个因缘。因此呢，菩萨并不在意你是不是来伤害他，他会把这看作是一个机会来解脱你，来给你带到这个正道上。所以呢，当你和菩萨以这种方式建立了一种连接、一种因缘之后呢，菩萨反而终将会把你带到这个证悟解脱的道路上。
So these are some of the great benefits of bodhicitta and the greatness of bodhisattvas. So the point of this chapter is to become inspired. I mean, when we talk about this, when you talk about someone who is happy to be harmed because it gives them more opportunity to practice, you might wonder what sort of a crazy person is this, and I'm never going to be able to be like that myself. But actually, we all have the capacity to do it. We're all able to do it. We all have Buddha nature. We're all able to do the practices. We're all able to train ourselves in compassion. We just have to work towards it. So this is like our our job. You know, not only is it like our job as aspiring bodhisattvas, it's also something that's going to really bring us great happiness. I mean, can you imagine what it'd be like if no matter what people did to you, you were always happy and delighted that you were given either that people were being nice and it's wonderful that people are acting nicely, or they're giving you an excellent opportunity to practice patience. How wonderful. And you get delighted about even terrible things. I mean, imagine how easy life would be if you were like that.
就是如果你想到这个说，嗯，不，I'm sorry, I need to translate the verse 36.
Oh, do you want
The
me to
verse
put that back?
36, yeah, I know that's okay. I'll just so 第36计的话，我把那个刚才就是那个翻译说一下，就是说祭天菩萨说呢，谁升起了这种菩提心呢，我就恭敬的顶礼这位菩萨谁能令仇者得到安乐呢？我愿意皈依礼敬能让众生得到安乐的这个源泉。这是第36计，刚才我没有翻译。嗯就下面呢，那么我们现在这个第一个品全部都讲完了。就是现在我们回想一下，如果说这个刚才我们讲到，有人说被伤害还会感到非常的快乐，那么如果你生活中你遇到这样的人，你会想这是一个太疯狂的想法了，他还期待着被伤害，但实际上我们每一个人都是能够这样做的，这是因为呢，我们都还没有认识到我们自己都是有这种佛性的，我们每一个人都有这样的能力来训练我们自己这个大悲心这个慈心，所以呢。你设想一下，如果在现实生活中，无论在什么情况下，无论别人对你做了什么的话，你都把它想成是这是一个我训练我的这个忍辱，我是来训练我的悲心的这样的一个机会，你都很愉快的来接受它的话，那么生活对你将是一个多么快乐、多么容易的事情啊！
So, uh, it's important not to, I mean, on the one hand, we should be like amazed by bodhisattvas and what they do. On the other hand, we have to recognize that we're able to do the same thing. We have the same capacity. If we train in it, there's no reason we can't feel the same way. We can change our habits of mind and instead of being upset when bad things happen, then come to appreciate the good things. It's possible to do this. We just have to train in doing it. We haven't trained so much yet. That's why it seems difficult to us. But it's possible, and we can all do it. This is kind of an exciting thing. So it's like inspiring to think, yes, I can do this too. I can be like that. You can be, we all can be someone who's like a great bodhisattva because we all have the same potential. We're exactly the same in nature as the Buddhas and the bodhisattvas. And so because they're able to do it, then we know that we can also do it. So we just have to put a little effort into rousing bodhicitta, and then we can become the same.
当我们赞叹这个菩萨的这些伟大的行为的时候呢，我们也应该想到说，其实我们也是行的。只要我们愿意，我们要认真的修行文思修的话，那么我们也是一样能够有这样的能力的，做到这些菩萨们所做到的事情。这样的话，我们不是因为有坏的事情发生就感到沮丧，我们会更就是这个appreciate 生活中的好的事情。是 appreciate 所有发生的事情，所以呢，我们就是还没有训练自己，还没有激发出我们的这个菩提心。如果我们真正的意识到了我们跟佛跟菩萨在这个本质上是一样的话，如果我们意识到这一点的话呢，那么菩萨佛陀能够做到的事情，我们只要通过自己的努力、自己的文思修，终将我们也是能达到的。
So I think this is basically enough for this evening. I'm on the East Coast of North America, and so it's getting to be late in the evening. And I did have a cup of coffee at 2 in the afternoon, so I could stay awake, but I can tell it's beginning to wear off. So I will send you the study guide for your next discussion groups, and then we will have the we'll have the dedication prayers.
嗯，那今天我们就讲到这儿吧。我现在是在这个北美的这个东岸，现在我这边已经是很晚了，已经要这个进入到这个夜里边了。虽然我已经喝了2个咖啡了，但是还是现在已经感觉有点这个 比较晚了，所以呢，我现在把这个我们的这次的学习指南呢发到这个群组里边，我为你们可以接下来讨论一下。现在我们进行回向。
So let's please dedicate the virtue of our uh, teaching and listening this evening. We've completed the first chapter now. So let's dedicate the virtue of this so that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas may live long and continually teach the Dharma in all world realms, and that all the masters who, all the great teachers who teach the Dharma in whatever world realm also continue to teach the Dharma, and Kenshin Trungpa Rinpoche and other great masters may return to this realm and continue teaching the Dharma, and that we may also practice the Dharma, gain accomplishment, that all sentient beings may have this opportunity, and that they may all swiftly reach Buddhahood. And lastly, that all the plague, famine, and war that afflict this or any other world be swiftly pacified, that all sentient beings enjoy great happiness and prosperity.
那么我们这个念诵回向文的时候，我们把这一次我们学习第一品全部结束了，所有的这个功德呢，我们回向给所有的菩萨，佛菩萨，以及所有的这个上师们，伟大的老师、上师们，还有我们的老师们，祝愿他们长寿，然后常转法轮，然后接下来呢，我们也把这个功德回向给这个已经远离我们的这些上师们，给我们尊敬的创古仁波切，希望他们早日成缘再来。当然我们还要把这一切的功德回向给一切的众生，愿众生得到殊胜的安乐，早证佛果。同时呢，我们这个希望这个一切的灾害、瘟疫、饥荒、战争呢，都能就是迅速的平息。
So, Sunam Teye Tam Je Se Pani Topne Nye Pedanam Pam Che Ne Kegana Chibalak Chobai Sipe Tolero Wado Washo.
你晚上我进步等呀，进得等真好。
Thank you, Campbell.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Campbell.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I look forward to seeing you all next
Thank
week.
you.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes, thank you, thank you, sir.
Yeah, bye.
谢谢，谢
Bye-bye.
谢，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，
Amitabha. Thank you. So
再见。
再见，
excellent.
再见，再见。
再见，拜拜，谢谢大家。